Can a horror prequel about two people going for pizza during the apocalypse break the spell of mediocrity of horror in 2024? Let's talk about it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back, the Eye of the Storm podcast. Today, we'll be reacting to A Quiet Place Day 1. If you want to get straight into the main discussion, we have timestamps below. But before we even get into the main discussions, guys, we need movie recommendations for our peoples, our peeps. What's the best recent thing that you guys saw last week?
So the best thing I saw last week was a small Hulu sitcom that I had never heard of before called Reboot, which is a 2022, I think, sitcom about an old 2000s sitcom that is being rebooted 20 years later for streaming. And it's basically, it's not the smartest comedy ever, it's not the funniest comedy ever, but it's solid. And it's one season of these writers and actors trying to revive the show that essentially made their careers or started their careers 20 years ago, and they've gone on to do different things over time, most of them not terribly successful. And a lot of them basically need this to work. And so they have to figure out how to make a sitcom in 2022, how to do a reboot of a show in a completely different TV environment. And there's this generational clash between newer writers and the older writers with very different senses of humor and ideas of what the show should be. I had never heard of it before. It was one of those straight to Hulu shows that here in the UK showed up on Disney Plus. It seems to have generally positive reactions, but it's just an enjoyable watch. It's pretty short. It's 8 20-minute episodes, and I basically watched it in an evening, and I had a good time.
Actually sounds quite interesting. It sounds fun. It sounds like one of those kind of like just like feel good shows that you can just like watch and pass time with, to be honest.
Yeah, it just kind of does some drive-by commentary about like how humor has changed and that sort of thing. And like there's this one actor who's always 1 inch away from being cancelled and stuff like that. So there's a little bit of that. And yeah, but it's just a solid comedy, and there's actually they're in short supply. Like it's really hard to find just a comedy that's not too heavy and that isn't like a big production and that just wants to tell a funny story for 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes you just kind of want that. I don't know some of the type of humor that's in there, but sometimes in these sort of TV shows, you just kind of want just like a bit of like goofy humor, just kind of something like to watch, something that's like not too heavy. Kind of, well, not reminds me of, but like sounds along the lines of what's the TV series I watch? It's called something like about Once Upon a Time or something like that. It's basically about like this couple that make a true crime podcast based on a real killer, and they're making the podcast with that particular killer. And again, one season of it, and it's just like fun, like feel good fun.
Yeah. This is very much that kind of show. And like 20 years ago, it probably would have gotten 5 seasons on some TV network. But now it's kind of dumped somewhere in the depths of streaming services. So that's kind of why I picked it this week, because this is a perfectly fine show. It's not the best show ever. It's not my favorite comedy, but it's just a good watch, and it doesn't deserve to be quite as obscure as it is.
And again, with this stuff, not everything needs to be 10 out of 10 every single time. Like sometimes like the 7 out of 10s and 8 out of 10s are just good enough to watch. But yeah, my best recent thing watched. So I'm 2 episodes into Dark Matter. I don't know if you guys have heard about it. I saw some chat about it online.
Yeah, I nearly finished that.
I've heard of it. I've not seen anything about it yet.
Okay, yeah. So it's from Apple TV, and Apple TV seems to have a lot of these hidden gems on their platform. They tend to produce, good quality stuff consistently. But essentially, it's based on a guy that is abducted by himself, but from an alternate reality. And essentially, they switch places in this alternate reality. It's all based on this one choice that they made, where they got this girl pregnant, and one decided to have the normal kind of like happy family life and go down to the typical kind of like boring married life with kids, and then the other one chose to be selfish, asked for her to have an abortion, and pursued his work and his goals essentially. And the gist that I'm getting from it is that the person that pursues his selfish goals is got to a point in his life where he's having that regret, worked on this machine, and he's succeeded in building this machine, which has allowed him to travel to an alternate reality. And in that alternate reality, he's then living the life that maybe he actually wanted to live or felt like he missed out on by pursuing that selfish goal essentially. So I'm two episodes in. they're currently trying to sort of solve the mystery, or sort of or they kind of have a gist as to what's happened, and they're trying to sort of fix it, or the person, the guy that's been displaced is trying to fix what the alternate self of him has done, basically. But again, it's not anything that's a 10 out of 10 super amazing, but it's good pastime. Just one of those like feel good things that you can watch, and actors in it are pretty solid as well. Characters are warming as well, which is always good.
Sounds good, and it does interesting things with the parallel. The multiverse has been really overexposed in recent years, right? Does it do that well?
Again, I'm only 2 episodes in.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan's a little bit further in. Don't spoil it for me, Jonathan. So we won't get you to answer that question. But yeah, I don't think they've like fully explored that. Yeah, it's at the moment it's just a guy that's been displaced in a sort of a different world, and obviously you kind of go through the process of him going to the familiar places, going to the familiar people that he's familiar with, and him looking crazy because he's sort of trying to say that they have this sort of this rapport, this sort of connection, and they're just looking at him like he's absolutely crazy.
So it's a world in which it's not commonly known that there are alternate dimensions. He kind of has to hide it.
Oh yeah, so it's not a common thing. Like no one knows about that they've been switched. So everyone is pretty much shocked, or well, I don't think many people have even though apart from his wife in the alternate dimension, but it's very much a case of it's not a normal thing in this particular world. Actually, sorry, there is a tease of this like organization that may be aware of it, but we haven't gone too much into them just yet. Again, 2 episodes in, but there is this organization that were questioning him, and then he escaped from. The escape was a bit BS, if you ask me, to be honest. But we're not critiquing it too much. But yeah, there is a tease of a wider sort of kind of world with the multiverse, where people are potentially traveling between universes that they haven't revealed just yet.
But in terms of what I watched a series which was executively produced by Ratman. It's called Supercell. It's a fun series. It's a fun series. For people who don't know, it's about pretty much a group of black people, random, South London. They're all randoms, by the way. They all have superpowers, and one of them who has superpowers tries to like bring them together to pretty much save his girlfriend, because one of his powers is he can teleport as well as go into the future and go back in past and rewind and go back to the past and rewind time. So so he tries to save his girlfriend, and in terms of all of them having superpowers in like pretty much the hood and just like different type of in just a normal environment, it's pretty fun. It's similar to it has Misfits similarities ish and The Boys similarities ish a bit, not too heavy, but you can see some inspirations. But I do think it's a fun watch, because I think with Ratman's, like, obviously for people who are not familiar with him, he got famous for a lot of his short films where he incorporates his rapping with rap and actually storytelling into one. So I think one thing that people are always looking forward to, or one thing that's like a highlight moment when it comes to Ratman stories, is that there's an iconic death which is coming, and there was definitely that in this series as well. Like, it always build up to something. It's always building up to a death that you don't want to happen. So with this one, you felt it. You felt that was coming. Even though what was different is that we knew he was gonna die, by the way, because obviously we knew that the guy was trying to save his wife. In this one, we're just waiting to see if it was actually gonna happen. But it was Ratman, so like, okay, it's bound to happen. I think it is. It's definitely a fun watch. I do think at times I was scared because, especially in the first episode, you could tell that there wasn't really a big. I don't know what the budget was like, but it wasn't really big enough for a superhero series, because I think like there was a scene where they were in Oxford Circus, and Oxford Circus felt so big, but there was only 5 against 5, and like it just didn't really look. I think they should have done a minimalistic approach, which they ended up doing in the last episode, which I liked, when there was a showdown with the actual villains, which I really liked. They just had it like they literally were just fighting in some sort of park. Overall, it was fun. It was a fun watch.
That is on my list of things to watch. I think it's been talked about a lot. I'm actually glad it's got sort of positive reviews, and I'm actually glad that he's been given a chance. But it's on Netflix, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just to see sort of that man's growth from sort of doing YouTube sort of short stories like Shira Story and stuff like that to then sort of building his way up to having sort of a Netflix TV show. Really good to see for sort of the community. So definitely on my list of things to check out.
Now, main event time. A Quiet Place, day one. For people who haven't, Daniel, you're good at this. Please let the people know what Quiet Place Day One is about.
So this is a prequel to, I think, 2018's A Quiet Place, about this woman, Samira, who is dying from cancer and is living in a hospice, and she is essentially given up on life, right? She's essentially waiting to die. And then aliens invade. And rather than try to get to safety or try to fight back, she decides if she's going to go out, she wants to go back into her neighborhood, which she has had to leave due to her treatment, and she just wants to have a slice of her favorite pizza, and that's how she wants her life to end. And so in this chaotic apocalypse in which there are these alien creatures that hunt by sound, and so nobody can make any sound, which is the whole premise of A Quiet Place, she's basically just trying to get to her old neighborhood, and she encounters this British guy who is stranded in New York during the invasion, and who decides to take her along and help her realize her goal. And that is essentially the movie.
A dying woman's last wish, pizza, which I found hilarious. But if it you know, I like this film. I liked it. There were times which I found a bit slow, which was in terms of obviously the relationship dynamic between the two main characters. But besides that, I think overall this was a great addition to the franchise. It was definitely gripping. I felt like it was it was like an anxiety thrill type of film because you never knew which sound was gonna get them. And I think they really like, even though that's something that was executed in the first two films, this one I think it was probably, for me, I think this was the film which was the best when it comes to that, in terms of you never know which sound is actually going to get someone, because it was such an infested city. Because obviously the first two, it was very isolated in terms of like the people. There wasn't really that much people, so the environment was very slim to none when it comes to the survivors. But this one, obviously, it's a whole city. Obviously, we're seeing people get picked off one by one, and we see people, as a collective, staying silent, which obviously provides the anxiety and the thrill when someone actually does make a sound. You're like, everyone's looking around, and it's like everyone's waiting, including the audience. We're like, okay, we know that they're coming, but who the hell's gonna die? Oh, and there'll be times where you don't know when they're even coming, like which sound exactly is the sound that's actually gonna get you killed, which I really enjoyed in this film. Like, they executed that so well in this film. So I like the film, but like I said, there were times which was a bit slow for me. I kind of did zone out a bit when it comes to like the scenes between the two characters where they're connecting. I liked when they were going back and forth. Overall, I really liked the film, and I think this was the best film out of the three when it comes to just giving you that anxiety thrill.
I think this is the second movie in a row where I don't know how I feel about it. If this wasn't A Quiet Place day one, I wouldn't have had some of the expectations I had going into the movie, which weren't answered, which was really frustrating for me. I mean, the movie that we were presented with, again, something as Daniel described, was a good movie, and I felt like it was like really sort of strong, well acted from both actors. I felt like it was like really emotional. Again, like you mentioned about something like the whole like pizza thing. It starts off as this woman just wanted to get pizza, but then there's sort of the emotional payoff at the end. When I think about like it being day one and this being the third movie in the franchise, and there still being questions that aren't really answered in the movie. Again, we'll sort of kind of like touching it in the spoiler section. It just kind of drags it down for me. I felt like there was a lot of things that didn't make sense as well. Things that I know some people can look past, like the cat, for example. I know some people can look past the cat. The cat was one of the most ridiculous things in the movie for me. Just some of the rules that they set with the sound and stuff like that. Like I had question marks over, which again will probably delve a little bit more into into the spoiler section. So I guess overall, as just like an initial review, the movie that they chose to make granted, if it was like, a little bit further along, sort of, and not being day one, would have been a great story. Is a great story. It's emotionally gripping. It's sort of, very warming. There's like really great character moments in this movie, but there's just too many things that bugged me. I'm on the fence with it.
You say it shouldn't have been a prequel. You said you would be happy if it was more of a continuation.
I mean, it's difficult because for her story and sort of where she's kind of starting off and where sort of it takes her, sort of the journey of sort of her just wanting to get pizza and sort of where she begins in the movie, it makes sense. Obviously, it being sort of like day one and like the alien invasion happening and sort of her kind of having no hope in life, and not sort of really caring about surviving and just have that last slice of pizza before sort of she dies. For that purpose, it makes sense for it to be in day one. But for it being day one, there's a lot of questions about sort of how the world dealt with the invasion that just is kind of glossed over and isn't really answered in this movie.
Yeah, I think the big one is that you have to be on board with this being a character-focused story, right?
Yeah.
That it's just about her frame of mind and why she does what she does, and the psychology of essentially a story about letting go and about closure, right? Because this is somebody who has already gone through that once, and then is caught up in this disaster, right? And where everybody else is concerned with surviving, she's like, survival is the last thing on her mind, right? And then the question is, what does somebody in that situation do? I think that's really the core of the movie, and I think that it does exceptionally well. Like the acting of Samira is incredible, and the other main character Eric is also good, but I think Lupita Nyong'o really carries the movie here, like by a mile. I'm really surprised, or actually, that somebody made this movie, because I think this is a really unusual take for an alien invasion movie, for a post-apocalyptic movie, and for somebody to lean that hard into just a character study, I think is really bold, and it could have really backfired and just not worked. But I think it does. I think it really, like, you really feel with her as she goes through this grieving process, right? And this is the first time the entire year where, after the movie ended, people stayed in their seats in my theater and talked about the movie. It did not happen with Dune, it didn't happen with Planet of the Apes, but this is the one time where people were touched by the movie. And I think that speaks to its quality.
Also, I was gonna say that's why it makes her, like, her motivation so much more, like, understanding and meaningful as well as iconic, because it's like, even though, like, I remember when she told the guy, Eric, I remember when she told Eric, where she was going to go and look for a pizza, and obviously he was just looking at her like she was crazy. And he didn't even know that, spoiler section, he didn't even know that she had, was it cancer?
Yeah.
Yeah, she didn't even know that she had cancer. So when she revealed that, like, obviously we understand, because it's like, okay, you're dying, and even though what you're doing is ridiculous and it's crazy, and you're obviously, the environment that you're in and the settings that you're in, there's a whole alien invasion. Like, I understand, like, is your last dying wish. So that's what even made it more funny. I was like, she's actually doing it. It was crazy, it's ridiculous, but she's actually doing it.
But like what worked really well as well is that, like, even before the alien invasion, is her wanting to connect with sort of the place where she goes to get the pizza. It's like, she doesn't really want to go into the city to watch this puppet show or anything like that. But the thought of being able to go back to the pizza spot and have sort of that connection again to that place, and then for that to then sort of kind of like carry through to the rest of the movie, was like really well done, essentially.
But going back to, because I have a question, going back to a point that you made, Hervé, about there wasn't like an explanation, which kind of leads into my question. Does an alien invasion need an explanation though?
It's not more so the alien invasion, because they could have come from something absolutely anywhere. I guess they kind of half did it, but one, this is quite unique in the sense that if you make noise, you're going to die in this universe. So it's how they explained how everyone was able to sort of kind of understand that was the case, essentially, which I don't think was sort of really well done. Essentially, like that side of things, I had like a lot of problems with, in terms of just like, she was knocked out in the movie, basically. Like, the alien invasion happens, she's on the bus, it crashes, and then when she wakes up, she sees a few people like scream or make some noise, and then the aliens take them, and then you have the guy that like puts his hand over her mouth and basically like gets her to sort of be quiet. So it's like, from her perspective, okay, yes, she was knocked out, but then for everyone else, it's how do you understand? Like, how do you correlate the two? That making a sound is going to get you killed by these aliens? Because if I see an alien, I feel like I'm going to die, whether I make a sound or not, basically.
Yeah, and it's really counterintuitive, and it's a bit strange that many people figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Like when there's this evacuation scene at the end, like there's thousands and thousands of people, and they all figured this out.
Mhm.
Right, we know what's happening, right? If we've seen the previous movies, but like that is probably one of the weaker points.
Yeah.
And I think that is just, I think much like the first Quiet Place, you kind of have to accept that it's happening,
Mhm.
right? In order to make the story happen, which I'm normally not a big fan of, but this is like the one gimme that the movie gets, right? Like this, like the aliens operate by sound, and they're really dangerous, and people have adapted to it. And now what happens? Now what do they do? And I think this movie had the challenge of showing that initial sequence, but there was also things like the military figured it out really quickly and they notified everybody, right?
Yeah.
That was part of it. Like
Yeah.
they had the jets flying low and saying over the speakers, do not speak. Like the aliens are attracted to sound and they can't travel over water. Like we saw how people in general figured it out really quickly and then warned each other.
Mhm.
Right. So I think I'm not saying it makes sense necessarily, but I think that is what the one thing the movie asks you to accept.
Yeah.
And you're either on board with it or you're not.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to it being a Quiet Place day one, and sort of, I didn't see any of the marketing material, any of the trailers, and anything like that. So going in there, knowing it being day one, and having set expectations on my side, and again, it's an individual thing on my side of having set expectations, but then the movie being about something completely different, and then sort of it not really meeting my expectations, and it kind of jarring me in my experience of sort of watching the movie.
The expectation certainly is that you see the how, right? Like
Yeah.
almost every prequel would say, okay, this is how the alien invasion happened, and this is like, let's show some scientists in a room as they figure this out, and they like maybe they kill one of the aliens, and there's an autopsy scene, and look at this big organ that looks like an ear, and all of those. Like none of that happens, right? And that is obviously deliberate, but it's also a bold choice, right? It's certainly not what audiences expect from a sci-fi horror prequel.
Yeah.
Like normally prequels are there to fill in all the blanks,
Mhm.
and that's I think what's really remarkable about this movie is that it kind of understood why prequels are typically bad and poorly made stories, and then just said, what if we don't do those things? What if we kind of just do it properly this time, right? And think about what story we have to tell in this setting and how we want this to unfold, as opposed to going through all the tropes. Like we don't see the original family, we don't see an explanation for where the aliens come from. Anything you would expect from a prequel is just not here.
Yeah. So the follow-up question to that then would be, how much, again, with this being the third film in the franchise, how much does it then add to kind of like the lore and like the world building and stuff like that to kind of continue the story? Or
approximately nothing.
Yeah.
Right?
guess
It's
it
like
goes-
there was this one scene where I don't know, it looks like they were eating eggs.
Yeah.
Kind of, I wasn't entirely clear what it was, but there's a scene where Eric is trapped on this metal beam, right? I think he followed the cat or something.
Yeah, the egg.
And
yeah,
then he sees the aliens, like they're gathered around something that looks like eggs, and they are breaking them open and eating them. And it's not entirely clear what that is. And because he doesn't get any explanation, or we just see it. And maybe that is something that's setting up for something in part 3 or whatever. But I think that is the only thing. I think everything else is directly from is them not being able to go on water. That's from part 2, right? Because I've seen the part 1 and I've seen this one. I've not seen part 2.
I've not seen part 2 either.
I don't remember fully what happened. I do remember they figured out how to kill the aliens, which wasn't with water. It was actually with some sort of device which creates some sort of piercing sound. But I don't remember if
and which is not in this movie either. Like nobody figures this out.
Wait, there was a scene where they were locked in some sort of basement and it was flooded, and I don't think one of the aliens. I think the aliens like using the walls to walk across. I'm not too sure, but
yeah.
I think sorry.
The alien tries to go after them underwater and it dies. And the implication being that water is toxic to them. And this is also figured out very quickly, and in the end we have people surviving on boats and stuff like that. And I am not having seen part 2. I don't know if this is a new addition or if this comes from that movie. It sounds a bit like it comes from part 2. So they add nothing to the mythology, right?
No, I just think this. I think this film was just to address how society came to be, obviously in part 1 and in part 2. So I don't think it had nothing. It was just literally just.
I don't think that happens. I think we just see people surviving, right? We kind of have to justify that not everybody dies, but after that, it's all about Samira. Right.
Wait. But hold on. That's pretty much self-explanatory though, in terms of day one being obviously an explanation of how it came to be, because I get it was revolving around Samira, but when you're seeing all of those aliens and obviously seeing what they're doing to, where they're based in Chicago, I'm pretty sure is universal. It's gonna end up spreading.
Yeah, no, but like we don't spend a lot of screen time on how people figure things out, right? We're just given glimpses that, okay, people figure out the thing about the sound and they figure out that they're safe on water. And that's it, right? Like we don't see, like it's not a big part of the story. The actual story is just about Samira's journey. And then in the background, we see a couple of more important milestones, like the original chaos, and then people figuring out to be quiet, and then people figuring out that they're safe on water. And that all happens in the background, but no screen time is spent on it. That's what I mean.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
And I think almost everybody expected this, right? Like we were expecting some kind of like in most prequels, somebody would have figured out the resonance thing, right? That if you create the right sound, it stuns the aliens, and then they're easy to kill. And then you would have had to come up with a contrived answer to why this isn't common knowledge in the first movie, even though it happens over a year later and stuff like that. But this movie just didn't do that. It just said, okay, we're going to stick to the basic rules, and then we're gonna follow a very specific story just on a personal level. And I think that's why this movie works so well, because it doesn't get bogged down with any of the other stuff.
Speaking on personal level, how do you feel about the duo between Eric and Sam?
So the one thing I didn't buy was that Eric would jeopardize his life to help her. Like I didn't really see the point at which he said, okay, so you're trapped in a foreign country, you have nobody, you're trapped in this disaster. Why are you risking your own life and probably throwing your own life away, right? By not going with with most of the displaced people, not by trying to get to the boats, you are probably going to die for somebody you've just met.
Well, it's fair because he was by himself at the time.
But he could have just followed the crowd.
But the crowd were gone.
Not when he first appeared. Not when he first appeared, because there was a bit of chaos going on when he first appeared. And I think the cat kind of leads him to the alleyway that she's in. Just before, the scene that happened before was extremely stupid as well. Where you had again, everyone knows that you have to be quiet, but then you've got
that's the scene I felt was a bit stupid, but but I'm sure they were gone because
he knew most of them were he knew go in that direction, and that's where the boats are.
Yeah, he knew that, but he was by himself at the time. So why that scene made sense for me is because obviously fear's gonna make you do a lot of things. So that's I understood why he was still there, because it was like, okay, I could either go by myself and find a crowd, because I think they were gone. I didn't see any of them around them. Because I'm sure if we watch the movie again, I didn't see no one around him. Maybe there was some people running in the background, but I didn't see anyone around him, because he was even looking back there. The way, when she said go over there, he looked back, and when he looked back at her, you could see the fear in his face. So it was like, is that either his reaction was because obviously monsters are chasing them, or either it's because they're all gone, and obviously he's gonna have to go by himself and find a crowd. So that's why I thought that kind of makes sense why he followed her, because it was like, okay, I don't want to die, and this is a person that's, this is the only person.
But then why follow the one person who's going to get you killed? Right? Why not go with everybody else? I understand being scared, I understand trying to find somebody to latch onto, but why her specifically, right? The minute he figures out that she's not going where everybody else is going, he would have said, okay, I need to get to safety. Good luck. Right?
Yeah, but if you put yourself in a situation, right, where you're by yourself and you're in a situation where if you go one way, cool, you're gonna follow a group of people, but they're not there in eyesight view. You know what I'm saying? They're not there. You can't see them. So you're gonna have to go by yourself where it's infested with aliens, where one's gonna pop out, or you're gonna go somewhere where you're there's someone right next to you right now, right here. You know what I'm saying? So I think most people would choose to stay with someone rather than
No, that all
risk
makes
their life.
sense, but the one person who's not going to safety. Like, that's kind of my thing. Like, I've been in, not exactly, obviously not alien invasions, right? But like unusual situations in foreign countries where I didn't know anybody. And one thing you do is you go with the crowd, right? You don't go off in some random direction on some quest, right? So I just one thing I just didn't buy is that why he wanted to risk his life for somebody who he has never met, when in fact there was a very clear direction in which you had to go for safety, or at least for your one shot at safety. So, and I think the movie had a hard time justifying this because it's not like they can talk it out, right? Like they have very limited ability to communicate. And so they have to resolve it in a very short scene. And I don't think they quite got that. I think that was the one thing where you just had to go along with it. And after that, as they spend more time with each other and get to know each other better, then I buy that he starts to care for her and he wants to create this one perfect memory for her. Like at that point, right? Or go out to a pharmacy, try to get the painkillers for her, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like everything that came after that, I bought, because at that point they had gone through this journey and they had saved each other and they had shown that they, that together they have a better chance or whatever. But that initial decision to go with her as opposed to everybody else's, I didn't buy. That's all I'm saying.
I understand. I just think he just didn't want to be alone, because even when they had a conversation in their flat where he says he came for a law degree, all his family is back home, so he's pretty much in America by himself. That kind of made sense to me as to why he followed her later, even though that scene happened later. It kind of still made sense to me. Okay, it made more sense to me now when he chose to follow her, because I thought everyone was gone. So it's like, okay, he just doesn't want to be alone anymore. So he's just gonna stay who's closest to him. But I get where you guys are coming from. Okay, so what would you say?
Sorry, can I just add that was a funny scene as well, where he's just like following her behind and she's trying to like shoo him away. That was
well, okay, so speaking of their that relationship duo, did the cat have any significance in this film that we missed, or was it just there as a comforter?
That's what I would like to know, because the idea of a cat not making any sound whatsoever or purring or whatever like that kind of broke the immersion for me a little bit, especially when the cat was submerged underwater for a bit as well. It's like, I've been around cats. Cats hate water, and cats.
But do they have symbolisms around them, though, cats in general?
This is what I'm asking, because I didn't pick up on any. I didn't know.
There is some symbolism of cats predicting death. Like there have been like stories about how cats living in like retirement homes, and they always go to the person who's next to die. The idea being that they can sense that person won't be around for very much longer. I don't know if that's what this was. I don't know. I think the initial inclusion of the emotional support cat was just kind of a sense of how she was still human but couldn't deal with other people. That was my takeaway from it, right? That is why she had the cat, and like she had clearly gone through a very, like, before the movie starts, right? This whole thing about being in the hospice and being like 50 years younger than everybody else and having nothing in common with anybody and just being there to die. I understand getting that cat and that being your one life, like one emotional connection to anybody in your life, right? She doesn't seem to have any family left. If they are, they're never mentioned. So I think it has something to do about how broken her emotional life is, because she has been preparing to die for such a long time. But I'm not sure what benefit the cat had in the rest of the movie. Like, it seemed to be a little bit of a gimmick. Like, we're constantly following that cat around, and it never creates a problem. Like you said, it never makes a sound, even when it should. Like cats are like probably smart enough to figure out when there's danger, and they probably see that the humans are behaving strangely, and there's probably a reason for it, and stuff like that, right? But it was a little bit far in a lot of places.
Yeah.
So what would you guys highlight moments?
I was gonna say, I actually like, again, one of the like just good emotional scenes was when they're in the apartment and it's raining outside, and obviously they realize that because of sort of the rain side, they can actually like speak and like talk and whatever, and it's obviously like thundering as well. And then just the release of emotion when they're screaming, I just felt was like a good scene, because you can feel like they've been through sort of kind of so much trauma up until that point, and they're having to withhold so much because they can't make a sound. They can't, they can't express anything at all. Otherwise, they're going to die. So in that one particular moment, they're able to just fully let go and fully release. Like that was just one of the highlights for me.
Which was also a callback to the first movie, right? Where the father takes the son to the waterfall, and the son is absolutely traumatized, right? Because every day of the last year and a half has been to just avoid making sound. And he's absolutely, like, he's completely shell-shocked when his father tells him to scream or make a sound or even just talk. And so I thought that was interesting that the same scene basically happens in both movies, but it has a different context, right? In the original movie, it was the father teaching his son a survival skill, right? And bonding with him and trying to get a semblance of emotional normalcy. And here it is about people who have lived through a crisis, right? In a way that the people in the original movie didn't, right? They're not really in a crisis. They're in a constant, under a constant threat, but it's not a crisis, right? Whereas in this movie, it is very much an emergency, and they've had to adapt very quickly, and they've been just in constant alert mode for a day, basically, and now suddenly they can vent, right? So I thought there was a neat parallelism without just being a retread, because it's the same basic actions being in a completely different context.
I actually forgot that about the first movie,
Actually, watched it yesterday, so that's why it's fresh in my mind. But yeah, there are several scenes that are just very similar, and that just come from the same basic rules, right, of the sound-based stuff.
And I know we kind of moved away from things that kind of maybe like irked us a little bit in the movie. That was one of the things about like the waterfall and why I know that they sort of can't survive in water and this and the other, but the water fountain is still making a sound. Like there's still sound being made. So well,
the idea is that it drowns out the sound, the speech. Right?
Yeah, it's still a sound because they react to all sounds. They react to all. So
in the first movie, it's made very clear that they react to the loudest sound. Right? They don't go after every sound. They go after the loudest sound they hear.
Yeah.
And as long as what you're saying is drowned out by a louder noise like thunder or like water fountain, it's fine. You can talk. You just have to. It's this constant game of trying how loud can you go. Right, which was more of a deal in the first movie than here, but it appeared here again, and that showed up during the thunderstorm scene, and that showed up with the children in the hiding under the water fountain and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think it does make sense, right? Because they're not going after, like I said, not going after every sound.
Yeah. So in that context, yeah, but then there's other scenes that contradict it in terms of like the shirt ripping scene or just like any like little like crack and the monsters react to it. It's just
I don't think it's perfect about just how much sound attracts the aliens.
No,
but it continues this suspense of you never know which sound is going to do it. Right? And like there's a scene when they're walking down the road, right, and there's somebody in a wheelchair, and the wheel of the wheelchair makes just a little bit of a squeaking noise. And there's some other thing that makes just a little bit of noise, and there's this tension of, is this enough? Like, is this what will set off the aliens? But yeah, I think you're right. Like if you really scrutinized it, there would be some inconsistency about just how much sound causes an attack.
How did you guys feel about the ending? She pretty much took off her headphones. So pretty much her.
She pulled out the headphones so that the speakers would start playing.
Yeah. How do you feel how that came to conclusion? Do you think that was a good ending? She should have continued on living, or?
So one thing I didn't really get why she had to sacrifice herself for everyone, right? Because I understand that she has nothing to live for and she doesn't want to. She has achieved her closure now, and therefore she can die. But they frame it as a little bit as one of us has to sacrifice ourselves so that the other can live. And so it makes sense that the terminally ill person sacrifices themselves, right? That didn't quite. They should have just gone separate ways, right? Where he says, "Okay, there's a boat there. We can make it," and she says, "No, I'm done. You go." Right? That would have been enough. I thought they framed it a little bit as they both were going, but then she stayed behind to cause a distraction. Then that didn't quite work. I didn't think. And I kept waiting for it to for the scene to start making sense, and it didn't quite. Like they didn't sell it as this has to happen now so that he can live.
Yeah, because even the whole when she's like smashing the cars and this, that, and the other, I felt like they gave her a little bit of plot armor during that particular scene, especially when they've shown how the sort of aliens have reacted to sort of the loud sounds in previous previous attacks. And then again, what also didn't make sense was that after sort of the aliens have stopped chasing her and they start chasing Kim towards the end, it's why didn't she make one more sound to attract the aliens kind of back to her?
Yeah.
And he then goes to the boat. It's just, I feel like they needed to create the tension so we can maybe give them a little bit of blight in that, but it's just another thing that just didn't make sense to me.
And instead they give us like this kind of, I think that's the one cliche action scene where he runs on the pier and the aliens almost catch up to him, but then like they try to grab him and like by an inch he gets away and falls into the water into safety. That was the one cliche scene.
Yeah.
Like I think it would have been stronger if that he was doomed until she, I don't know, yelled or like made some kind of sound to attract them back to her. Something like that, right? It felt like we kind of have to do this. Like we did the scene in the jazz bar that we wanted to do, but now we still have a movie to finish.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how that one scene came across. I think it should have just ended there, where she's achieved her closure. He's helped her get it, but he still has a life to live, and so he walks out and goes towards the boats. That should have been the end. He didn't actually need to get to the boats.
It could have also been a case where you said where they're going kind of separate ways, where she's maybe got her headphones in or she's got like something in, and then as he's going to the boat, he's made a sound, and then the aliens started rushing him. So then she then at that point pulls out the sort of the headphone and then plays the music out loud and is happy, like she's like fulfilled what she wanted to achieve. She's kind of listening to music she wants to, and then she's going out on her terms essentially, or whatever. I feel like that could have worked as well.
Yeah, and an otherwise really strong movie that doesn't do any of the cliches and doesn't have these kinds of loose threads. I thought that scene kind of stood out. But I think the actual ending, which is the scene in the jazz bar, I think that is the real ending of the movie. And I think that one is borderline perfect. Right? Because she gets just everything she needs, and her life doesn't need to go on at this point.
Yeah. For me, it was actually when, what's his name, Ruben died. I think when he died, that kind of like set the tone of the harsh reality that they're living in. So unexpected. Well, it wasn't unexpected. It was something that was coming, but it was hard to take. It was very emotional. I was like, damn, like that's like the one person. Sorry?
Are you talking about your favorite scene? Or
yeah, my highlight scene. That was my highlight moment because that like set the tone for me. That's when I actually like had my intention gripped. I was like, oh damn, this is Quiet Place. Because I think Quiet Place was also known as well for like deaths as well, the iconic deaths. So in terms of both the films. So yeah, with that scene, I was like, damn, like this we're in the Quiet Place setting, we're in the Quiet Place world, we're in the Quiet Place universe. But also, speaking of this has actually broken the franchise's record when it comes to the opening weekend. So this film is doing really, really well. What does this say for like cinema? Because obviously, in terms of, I'm not trying to kind of go adrift from the topic at hand, but a lot of films have been doing well, especially when it comes to, I think, the horror genre as well has been doing very well last year and this year. Would we say Quiet Place 1, day one, could be a resurgence when it comes to box office sales, when it comes to cinema in general, the interest people have for cinema? Are we starting to see it now?
I mean, normally horror movies do well in the box office because their bar is so low, right? Like with an $8 million, $10 million budget, it's hard to fail. Kind of like that's why it's such a reliable genre.
Sure.
But this is different. Like this is going on $100 million as we're recording this. I think this is just a really well-managed franchise. Like I said, I haven't seen part 2 yet, but it seems like this movie is not obligatory. This is not a setup movie. This is not anything else that we would associate with franchises. It is just a story in this world. And it takes the rules that have been set up by the franchise and then applies them to a new circumstance. And I think it really shows that this franchise has legs because And I'm not a Quiet Place fan. Like before Sunday, I'd never seen one of these. But I think it shows that you can just put all sorts of people into the situation and then see what they do. And you can have all these different, like, this is completely different thematically from the original, right? The original is all about family and about sacrifice for the people you care about and building for a future that may never come and all of these things. And this movie is not like that. This is thematically completely different, which I think is really interesting about it, but people showed up for it, right? This isn't just Quiet Place fans, right? People are just being attracted to this for some reason. And it's easy to say, well, if you just make a good movie, people will go see it, but plenty of good movies fail. And like people generally have not been going to non-franchise movies, and this is not a crowd pleaser. This is not a huge franchise. So this is a pretty young franchise, right? This is not like a long-standing thing that people are nostalgic for. This is basically a new story that is well liked among people who have seen it, but it's not like one of the big IPs that people normally go to the cinema for, right? I don't think, and it's also a horror prequel which don't have a good track record. It's not, it's not a slasher. There's not a big body count. It's very introspective. It's very character focused and emotional. Like on paper, this should not work, but somehow it has, just because it's gotten good word of mouth. So I'm honestly surprised, but I'm happy for it.
I think one thing that I hope that cinema takes from some of this franchise, specifically, is what you mentioned about how you just have characters and you put them in this situation. You have like different characters, you put them in this situation, and then you just see what they do. Again, like you mentioned, like the themes between sort of this movie, and sort of the first one, two completely sort of different things set in the same universe. And I feel like more franchises need to be braver in terms of sort of not having the same feeling across sort of all its different movies, and sort of trying to sort of go with the same themes or the same sort of gimmicks or the same stereotypes or typecasts or whatever. I feel like a lot of franchises just need to be braver and sort of tell. I mean, we just had the discussion about sort of Star Wars, but that's an example of a place where you can just have more unique stories set in the same universe, and as long as you do it well enough, this is an example of it, but as long as you do it well enough, people will sort of have positive reactions to it. And again, even if it doesn't do well out the gate, the positive word of mouth will carry the movie.
So what next then? Because then Dan, you said earlier as well, not one when we were back at work, you did say there's going to be one more after this in terms of part 3.
Yeah, from what I understand, there's a core trilogy planned, which is part 1, 2, and 3. And this is essentially a side story, like not directly connected to the main story, which I think is about that family from the first movie and where they're going. And this is basically almost like an anthology thing, where for one movie it follows somebody else's story in that same world. That's my understanding.
But like, where after that, what did they do? Because they've got such a successful franchise, right? But people always they're scared that like production companies don't know when to end a story, because because they'll milk it out and try and get as much money as they possibly can, and that can kind of like ruin the franchise itself, and obviously the kind of moments that it produced from the previous movies. So with this film, what do they do next after the part 3? Like, should they continue? Like, should they be like a continuation, as in they create more movies, or should they kind of break it down into like series, or should they just come to an end in general?
So this is really an opportunity to do it right? So it sounds a bit like the core story is actually moving forward, right? Like the status quo at the end of the first movie is very different than at the beginning. It's not just about survival, because at the end of the first movie they discover a weapon, right, which is the acoustic resonance kind of thing. And I think in the second movie, the daughter is the main character as well. So it sounds to me like they have a story in mind that is going somewhere. And I really hope that they keep moving forward. And it's not just people have to be quiet for 2 hours. Like if they do that, then it gets very stale very quickly. And I think in this case, it's saved by the performance of the 2 main actors. But I think the way to ruin this franchise is to just keep doing that same thing over and over again. And I hope they can go forward in the story and then keep changing the status quo to reflect how people adapt to this alien invasion and eventually start fighting back. Because this is very much a very humanist and very optimistic apocalypse. Probably the most optimistic and pro-humanity apocalypse I've ever seen. Because there are no bad people in this. Right? Across the two movies that I've seen, there are no bad people. Nobody's taking advantage of anybody. There's no looting, there's no raiding. It's just people hunkering down, trying to live, trying to care for each other, and trying to help each other. In the first movie, that was the family. And even when they encountered other people, there was never any aggression, right? Because everybody's just trying to survive. And here it's very similar. We don't see any looting. Nobody's trying to take advantage of anybody. Nobody's, doing anything negative, right? Everybody's just human, right? And that is very refreshing and very surprising. I was actually expecting somebody, like in this movie, to start looting a shop, and that sets off, like that breaks and they break windows to do that, and then the aliens eat them or something. And not even that happened.
You had,
right?
sorry, there was the one moment of conflict, which actually was another like highlight scene in this, where you had the father, where he's there with his son, and then you have the guy that's threatening because he feels hopeless. I think the helicopter's just been taken down. He feels hopeless and he wants to kind of like shout and speak, and he's having to like restrain the guy and like stop him from speaking, and he's looking at like back and forth between him and his son. And I think they play it that he accidentally kills him by like smashing his head against the rock.
True.
I feel like that was like the one kind of moment of a gray moment in sort of the movie between sort of people's humanity and sort of what you would have to do to sort of survive and sort of protect your loved ones.
But even that came from a good place, right? That was out of desperation because this one guy was about to ruin it for everybody else, and he wasn't trying to kill him, right? He was trying to get him to be quiet, and then accidentally smashed his head against the wall, right?
Yeah.
And he was shocked when it happened.
Yeah.
But like take any other apocalyptic story, and people immediately turn into monsters without exception.
Yeah.
And this is the exact opposite. And I think that's really notable, and I think that's why it feels fresh and different.
I think that was actually a smart implementation as well, because it has you thinking as well, is that what's to come? As in, like, is humanity going to start to break down? Is it going to be a thing where it's going to be one for themselves? Which is refreshing, like you said, that it did actually come to it. I think that's actually more realistic of what society would actually be like in that situation. There might be accidents, even though the accident was a big accident, but if we were ever in that situation, would most likely work together because there's strength in numbers. So yeah, it was actually very refreshing to see.
I think the realistic version is that both happens, but I think the apocalyptic genre way overstates how selfish and awful people are. Because go look at any crisis, natural disaster, war zone, anything. There's looting happening, there's exploitation happening, everything, like name it and it happens.
Yeah.
But there's also people helping each other, neighbors and strangers helping each other out, sharing food, sharing medicine, protecting each other, right? It is a mix of both, and the balance in the post-apocalyptic genre is way too much towards the cynicism, I think.
Yeah, and I feel like Lupita's character kind of encapsulates both quite well, where she's initially reluctant to have him follow her along, and she's trying to shoo him away for like her own selfish reasons. Obviously, she doesn't. And again, you can kind of see that she wants to kind of go against the crowd. She can see sort of some of the dangers of sort of being amongst the herd and this and the other, and having sort of people follow you around, and like them potentially making a sound that sort of might harm you. But then after that see the humanity in her, where after he's kind of like been with her for sort of a period of time, they start to break common ground, this and the other, and they start to like kind of like build a bond and stuff like that. Is when she's like wanting to help and sort of is a lot more human towards him.
Yeah.
Well, guys, last thoughts and ratings. Unless anyone else had any other questions.
That's why I paused. I know that Daniel always has something.
Yeah.
The only thing, this is maybe a bit late in the video to mention, but I thought it didn't look that great. That was kind of the one negative thing I have to say about it. Everything looked like the big CGI set pieces looked a little bit blurry, a little bit muddy. The jets flying overhead and the meteors dropping and all of that looked really good. But when you saw like into the distance and there was like burning skyscrapers or whatever, it really stood out for how bad that looked for me.
Yeah.
But that was contrasted with just the sheer quality for everything else. Like everything else looked great. The monsters, I thought, looked fine, not better than in the first movie for some reason. So I think they really were stretched in the budget here. But I think ultimately character and performance and story win the day. And I think on that front, this movie is so compelling that like I noticed it, but I didn't care really.
Yeah, I don't think I picked up on it, but I don't normally look too deep into it. Last thoughts?
Yeah.
I think I came into this on the fence, and again, that's having watched it only about like 2 days ago, and again going in with set expectations and being delivered a complete different movie. The movie that we are given is a great movie, and following this discussion, I kind of like lean a lot more positive towards the movie than maybe coming into this. And maybe you are like Daniel. It probably did well to not go the stereotypical route of prequels would do in terms of like over explaining things. And funny enough, even when we were having a discussion about where it can go afterwards, all I could picture was this like big final battle where you have everyone like kind of like shooting down all the different aliens, and it actually seemed underwhelming to me. It seemed like that would be the underwhelming choice for them to go with actually. So knowing that, that's kind of like bumped up this film. For me, again, the performances were fantastic. Like Lupita Nyong'o, absolutely carried this movie on her back. The chemistry between the two actors were fantastic. Funny I say fantastic. The male actor is going to be Johnny Storm in the Fantastic Four as well, and this is kind of like the first thing that I'm kind of like seeing him in, or really paying attention to of his. So that gives me high hopes for him in that movie as well. And yeah, overall a great story, a great warm, emotional story. Does a lot of things right. Does a lot of questionable things, but does a lot of things right. And yeah, I'd give it a solid 7.5 out of 10.
So this movie proves pretty much all of my arguments about that I've made, or pretty much all of my hot takes on the post-apocalyptic genre and about prequels and about pretty much everything else. And for that reason, I give it a 5 out of 6. Like, this is just excellent, and it's one of the few movies this year that I would want to rewatch because it doesn't have any big deal breakers in it. A lot of movies this year have had some good moments, but then they are embedded in kind of weird choices or something else that breaks down the movie for me. And this time I was just riveted all the way through. I have no major complaints. Maybe some of the logic doesn't quite hold up if you really scrutinize it, but just as a character-focused story that doesn't really expand the universe, but it kind of shows us a different slice of it. It just works, and it's just riveting on a human level, on a story level. It's just great.
Well, for me, I'm giving this film a solid, strong 7 out of 10. Very good story. It's definitely a film that will have you on the edge of your seat most of the times. I'd say half of the time. Yeah, man, this was a really good watch. It was entertaining. I wouldn't really say it was memorable for me, but I will say that it was definitely worth the watch. And for its time, as in like during my time watching it, it was so worth it. You'll be entertained. Like I said, and Daniel even touched upon it as well. Like, just having a good story is what that matters overall when it comes to a film. You don't have to concentrate on the aesthetics of it and the production budget, etc., etc. Even Godzilla -1, like the look of it. I remember you guys didn't really like it, so even though I did kind of like the look of the monster, but in terms of like, you could tell that you could tell that it had a very limited amount of budget, but the story.
I thought it looked good, but you could see the budget.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, but yeah, I think this just proves once you have a good story, trust me, like that's the main thing that matters. Have a good story and likable characters. But yeah, for me, a solid 7 out of 10. A very, very good watch, an intense anxiety thriller film, which it will definitely leave you on the edge of your seat. But guys,
sorry, I was just one thing. I actually can't wait to watch it again. Mainly because I've had this experience before where I've gone into movies with one expectation and then been given a different movie and disliked it on the first watch, and then having rewatched it with the correct expectations, actually enjoyed it a lot. So this is one I'm actually looking forward to rewatching, and then even seeing if it even bumps it up from a 7.5 to even higher, because I'm sure it can possibly do that. So.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention as well the performance. The performance was amazing, especially Lupita, and just the way that she stuck to character when it comes to her motivation of wanting to go and find pizza. She literally stuck to that goal. Amazing execution. Yeah, guys. Hopefully, you guys have enjoyed today's discussion. Have they?
Yep. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Of course, keep rocking with us and keep helping us grow.
Thank you, guys. We will catch you next week. Au revoir.
Ciao.
Bye bye.